Well, this is the last academic session of the program. I have the duty again to perform this task of being chairman for the morning session, and I'm honored. And what makes me very happy personally is to see that there are about 200 over delegates who are here seated this morning. Many have returned home because of their duties and flight schedules. However, I'm sure all of them would have benefited from this Congress. To start the closing ceremony for this morning, it will be in different segments, including a video presentation. I'd like to call upon some personalities to give some comments or make a review of the Congress, how they see it, how they felt about it, not only the academic sessions, but in terms of the facilities, in terms of the availability of information and etc. So can I call upon the chairman of the program committee, Dr. Tony Vail, to please come up and join me on this table, plus Josephine Burden, Dr. David Horton-Smith, and Dr. Wee. Tony? Dr. Tony Vail has been actually involved in this conference together with the Secretariat of World Leisure, together with our professional conference organizer, the Asian Alliance, and together with MAFIMA. And although we had only met, this is the second time we're meeting, but you know how personal you can get when you're on internet. So it seems that I know him for a long time. And I think he would be the best person to start off the session, because he's the one who, together with the Secretariat of the World Leisure Congress, Professor Gerald Kenyon, and a few other personalities, designed the whole program for this conference. So I'd like to pass the mic on to Dr. Vail.
Thank you, Sajid. In fact, I'm not going to give my evaluation straight away. I will, when the others have spoken, say something on behalf of the Programme Committee. And if I can just remind you that there was a group of people involved in the programme side of the conference, ably assisted by the organisations here and World Leisure, as Sajid mentioned. And they are Susan Shaw and David Compton, both of Canada, and neither of whom could actually be here for the Congress, but they did provide input, a lot of input along the way. And Ian Henry and Ian Cooper from the UK, and they're both here. And Dickon Young, who is the board member on the Programme Committee, and Leonard de Vries, who has been at the Congress, but again is not here this morning. And there was input from the various World Leisure Commission chairs, important input, and in fact from Jerry Kenyon and George Torkelson as Secretary General and Chair. So a lot of people were involved in organising the programme and getting it all together. But we thought we'd get some input from a wider cross-section of the World Leisure community than just the Programme Committee. And so we invited 3 people to address you very briefly. I mean, the remit is for us, all, between the 4 of us, to take no more than about 15 minutes altogether. And they promised to do that. And the first will be Josephine Burden from Griffith University in the UK, and I think we met her in the panel session earlier on community and the arts. And the second will be David Horton-Smith, who you also met. He's from Boston College, and he gave the talk on the keynote address on volunteering, and he can reflect on that part, which is an emerging part of World Leisure's interests. Dr. Wee Eng Ho, who's from the University of Technology, Mara, and he will give a local perspective on what the Malaysian reaction to this conference has been or might be or could be in the future. And then I'll give a couple of points resulting from consultation with fellow programme committee members. So if I can hand over to Josephine first.
Thanks, Tony. I've got a lot of images bumping around in my head, and I need to organise them into a 3-minute summary of what's actually happened. And I haven't really had, as all of you as well, I haven't really had the time during this week to reflect on what's actually pounding into my head. But anyway, here are a few things that I've thought about. First of all, I now want to go beyond the theme of the conference. The theme of the conference, as you know, is global forces and local responses. To see if there are any ways in which we have opened up space for a global dialogue between local partners. And that's a different way of thinking about what's going on here in terms of globalisation. We've been thinking about globalisation and local responses to that, and I'm wanting now to start thinking about the ways in which we can actually have a global dialogue that's between local partners, which is a very different way of conceptualising that. So how can we make this world process of relationships between people into a collaboration between diverse locals who have equal standing and respect for each other? First of all, it's no longer enough to simply describe global forces uncritically and show how local groups have rather quaintly responded. Our first keynote speaker, Stephen Lewis, began our conference by making a very charismatic and passionate appeal in which he suggested that the processes of globalisation must be concerned with social justice. That must be a primary concern. I think we tend to lose that passion either in academic objectivity or in the pragmatism of the practitioner. But we have to be critical of the colonising and disempowering aspects of the globalising nature of leisure in our age. Joe Maguire, in the second keynote address, continued this critical journey in relation to sport in particular, and sport has tended to be one of the major focuses of this conference. But he drew back from the radical implications of his critique. I believe that it's time to face the gloom and begin to explore ways of transforming sport and leisure to support the building of networks of relationships at the local level that enable a globalised humanity. In the last session that I went along to, and that was Vals Freisinger and Otello Harris, they were talking about their qualitative research in local Miami. And their research demonstrated that sport, as it is currently structured, tends to perpetuate rather than break down racial misunderstandings. Yet, despite all the critical work currently being undertaken, all of our theorising about leisure and sport is proving almost impossible to transform. The work of feminist scholars over decades has had minimal impact on the globalising juggernaut. But we could become very gloomy, again, is the word that Joe Maguire used. And I really passionately feel that we have to keep on engaging with the things that we can do. What can we actually do to take action in this process? And in thinking about what we can actually do, I think about the metaphor of world music. So in that process of world music, musicians of equal standing but disparate musical traditions come together with open minds and a shared love of music. Their collaboration leads to new forms of music. And what's important there is that those people have a shared love of music in that instance and equal expertise in a particular form. Even though the form of their expertise may be different, they have an equal standing. And I think that is one of the key things that we need to move towards, is recognizing that global expertise is not necessarily it's an expertise that is colonizing, rather than the notion of differences in expertise that can come together in collaborative processes. So, and in thinking about that metaphor, I also think about Malaysia and the ways in which Malaysia has seen waves of different peoples and centuries of globalizing forces, but are now using globalizing media to create an image of themselves as a diversity of people who share a common humanity. So I want to conclude, and I hope I haven't gone much over 3 minutes, by really thanking the people of Malaysia for granting me very small glimpses of the way you structure your way of life. I feel humble and grateful for having been at this conference. I think that World Leisure now stands at a significant point in its history. 50 years down the track, and I've worn my shirt to show that, which is just slightly older than Malaysia, and only slightly older. So the title of World Leisure suggests a wish to locate itself as a globalizing force. But in that process, we have to maintain social justice as our principal driving ethic. In the face of globalizing economic and political pressures towards colonization, we have to continue to struggle to create structures and processes that enable local peoples to negotiate with each other as partners to build a global community. We are all a product of both the local and the global. So that's my summary.
Thank you, Josephine. I'll hand over to David.
Greetings. I'm not going to try to assess the whole Congress, rather because I feel that volunteering is somewhat neglected in the field of leisure studies. I'm going to suggest a few kinds of research that I feel needs to be done. The first is comparative transnational study of the relationship of specific national cultures and ethno-religious subcultures to volunteering frequency, type, motivation, structure, and impact. There really is not that much material that is comparative on volunteering, and I think it's very important that we have that. Secondly, I believe we need study of why people choose volunteering in preference to other leisure activities, or why they don't choose volunteering, to put it in the reverse. Volunteering is a portion of leisure, but we don't know much about why it's chosen in preference to sport or tourism or hobbies or whatever. Thirdly, we need comparative transnational study of the prevalence of volunteer groups. The prevalence meaning the rate at which volunteer groups occur in different nations, different states within nations, lower level districts, counties in the U.S. There are theories, a few theories around about why some places, some areas have more volunteer groups than others, but this portion of volunteer study is in its infancy, and I think we need transnational inputs on this. We also need a great deal more research on informal volunteering, its motivation, its impact, as contrasted with volunteering in formal organizations, formal groups. Fifthly, I think we need to study the negative consequences of volunteering and to study deviant or negatively perceived volunteer groups. We tend to focus too much, in those of us who do volunteering research, on the positive, and there are negative consequences of volunteering and negatively perceived volunteer groups, and these need to be studied, as well as the great majority of more positively oriented volunteering and volunteer groups. We also need to study of the global scope of specific types of volunteering, and with that, the history of the spread of particular kinds of nonprofits and volunteer groups, whether it spreads by contagion or hierarchical diffusion, a couple of technical terms in the field. And lastly, I think we need especially a study of the motivation and impact of quasi-volunteering, people who are paid less than the going rate for their services in nonprofits, as contrasted with the motivation and impact of expense-reimbursed volunteers, as I am in this Congress, as contrasted with pure volunteering. And with that, I'll just say thank you for having me here at the conference.
Thank you, David. Now to Dr. Wee.
Thank you. Good morning. I would like to respond on various aspects of this Congress in this perspective of developing countries. All right. So, but anyway, I would like to stress that whatever I say is my opinion. So, no other organization should be implicated in this case. First of all, I would like to touch on the redevelopment of mega facilities. In fact, if you have listened yesterday morning on sport facilities and events, it is heartening to note that the redevelopment of facilities like Wembley is on the agenda. However, a question remains: are the facilities open to ordinary people when there's no official events? This is something that a big question for developing countries like Malaysia. Right? So this is a big issue. So definitely in Malaysia, the answer is no. This is a big issue because the funding of the facilities, the building of these mega facilities in developing countries are mostly from government, or I would say that it's 100% from government, as compared to what we have heard, it's 10% from government and 30% from the private. So if the taxpayer are paying the money, then what happened? Why can't they use the facilities? So this is something that I think this conference give policymakers some thoughts about how we're going to ensure that the facilities that we build will be used by ordinary people when there is no official function. That's my first point. In fact, I could not agree more to Ian Henry's presentation on the review of comparative analysis in sport policy, which strongly stated that interpenetration of phenomena and comparison of different systems were misconceived. So I guess for the next Congress, this comparative study of policies between developed nations and developing nations should be on the agenda. My next point is on mega events, which is very much related to sport tourism, especially in Malaysia now. This is the trend, in fact, for other developing countries too. Events like Formula One race, events like powerboat race, apart from economic aspects of providing jobs to the ordinary people. I use ordinary people, it's not elite, ordinary people. The ordinary people are not able to experience those activities as their leisure pursuit. What they could do is just to be faithful spectators. That's the most they can do, because I think economically they are not in that situation to use the facilities. Whether we like it or not, the achievement of sport is still the achievement sport is the dominant factor and has great influence on leisure pursuit. So what we are hoping for is to revive the interest in traditional games and traditional sports. In fact, way back in 1993 to 1996, the curriculum for physical education and co-curriculum in the teacher training colleges in the whole Malaysia, we have put in traditional games as part of our curriculum. But unfortunately, after 1996, things changed. There's no more traditional games in the curriculum. So I guess if we could have a look at this, and all this depends on the policy of the government and definitely policy of Ministry of Education, whichever country. In fact, if we look at media, the focus of media, so I guess everybody read papers for these few days. I think very little news came out, correct me if I'm wrong, about the Leisure Congress, if not for a small section. But if you look at the back, look at the Star newspaper, starting from the back page, you have at least 3 pages going for achievement sports. So I think this inequality should be addressed, especially for leisure sport. My next point is on future research. And I wonder whether this is the same in the developed countries. In developing countries, the effect of physical education and co-curriculum activities on leisure are not known. We have physical education. We have physical education in schools. It is compulsory for a child to do physical education. But if we look around, I mean, there's no empirical evidence. Look around, we discovered that many people are not pursuing leisure. So I guess maybe the answer should be the root causes should be in the implementation of physical education program or curriculum program in school. So as such, I would think that this aspect should be given serious thought, and research on the effect of physical education and co-curriculum activities on leisure should be carried out. So I guess maybe a comparative study between the developed countries and what happened in developed countries should be done. Another point I would like to bring out is the value that we attach to the word leisure. So I think in developing countries, maybe leisure, the word leisure carries different meaning for different ethnic groups, namely Chinese. If we talk about leisure means just to play around. So I guess Chinese parent will say, why do you play? There's nothing there. There's no money. So these are the aspect that we will see. This cultural aspect should be dealt with in great depth. I'm not saying that just because I'm a Chinese. So in developing countries, the different values are attached. So I guess maybe in developed countries, the same thing is happening with different groups. So in conclusion, this conference is relevant in the context of leisure in developing countries. However, it could have been better if this international forum can help in identifying the root causes as to why people do not pursue leisure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wee. And for one point in particular there, I think in a nutshell, I've at last known why the Chinese enjoy gambling so much. It's a profitable use of leisure. I've got 4 points to make, really, which are thoughts which are stimulated by the conference as much as very logical links to what's been happening. The first point is a very general and brief one that I think we should all know a bit more about the concept of globalization now. Its history, many of us thought it didn't have any history, but it does. Sometimes, in some perspectives, hundreds of years. Its diverse meanings and its sort of multi-directional processes. We've discovered that it's not just a unidirectional thing. It's got all sorts of possibilities and all sorts of meanings. So that's the first very simple point. The second is something which Josephine has really already referred to, but I want to reiterate, and that I think we see, fortuitously maybe, but partly by design, that Malaysia seems to represent quintessentially many of the issues we've been talking about through its cultural diversity. And we heard about how this cultural diversity came about as a product of global forces of the last century or two. So, you know, here it is in action. And then the current situation where Malaysia seems to be using this cultural diversity as a means and a basis for reaching out into the global community, actually making a positive of it, and embracing globalization in a way as a means of development. But, again, we've also seen a great awareness and consciousness of the importance of those various cultural components of the nation. And it seemed to be that almost speaks for itself about what we've been concerned about in this Congress. We've had a rich case study all around us during the course of the week. The third point is a reflection on the public-private split in leisure, the commercial versus the government, if you like, or government and community, and really this word leisure. And it seems to me that in the West, most of the Western countries, the study of leisure emerged during an era really on the backs of governmental concern. And so in North America, for instance, it's based very much on the parks movement. Publicly funded parks became the sort of push for leisure training and leisure courses and leisure research, and to some extent urban playgrounds. And in the UK, quite a big move was made when government-funded indoor sport and leisure complexes were being built. So it was a public sector, community-based, non-profit push which developed the whole interest in leisure, developed academic courses, and developed a concern for leisure as a phenomenon. Therefore, a lot of Western literature is, the piper, he who pays the piper calls the tune. Many of us cut our teeth on research, on government-funded research, and government was interested in people using parks, people playing sport, people attending the arts. And then many of us, when we got positions in universities and started developing courses, we had to take one step back and say to our students, for instance, and to the world at large, no, leisure is more than that. It is the commercial. It is the sitting around doing nothing. It is watching television. It is going on holiday. It is playing around. It is hanging about. And it's also the more devious thing. It is taking drugs and those sorts of things which we don't approve of and are damaging to the individual. All this is leisure. Well, we had to keep saying that. And we should study all of this in various ways. Now, of course, the piper is still calling the tune. So we don't train people to engage in all these things. We still train people to go into sport and the arts and so on. But leisure is still this broad concept. And it seems to me, from this week's experience and other experiences I've had, certainly in Asia, that the growing concern for the phenomenon of leisure in developing countries, which comes with increasing wealth, when you pass the peak of industrialization, working hours start to fall, and people begin to say, what now? We've got our incomes up, what do we do now? And you start saying, what about the quality of life? What about leisure? It seems to me that concern is happening in many developing countries at a time when, instead of, in the West, the public sector is pushing the agenda, it's the private sector. So we get these commercial stadia. We've got the pinball parlors machines, the Game Boys, and commercial resorts, none of which was there in such an obvious way 50 or 60 years ago when the West was developing leisure studies. So you're having to kind of you're almost doing the opposite, it seems to be. You're having to say, well, leisure is all this, but it's also public and community. issues. And it's the local playground and the park and so on, as well as the commercial and so on. And it's still all leisure, but we have to have concerns for some of these things which aren't happening and will therefore damage the quality of life. And certainly one theme in the conference which cropped up in certainly a couple of presentations I heard was about the globalization breaking down community, breaking up communities, breaking community links, and so on, and the loss of community. And it seems to me that is part of what leisure, publicly funded leisure, can do, which is seek to preserve some of those community values and community links and quality of life. So that's a bit muddled, but I think that whole issue of the public and private sector is an interesting one, and something I've certainly been caused to reflect on as a result of this week's deliberations. The final point I would like to make in terms of reactions to the Congress are, and a couple of speakers have already mentioned it, I think for those of us, both researchers and policymakers, a lot of questions were asked and a lot of people saying we don't know the answer to this, whatever it might be. And we certainly don't, where some countries may have tackled the question and begun to research into the impact of mega events or something like that, others haven't. And I would suggest that in more or less every area that's been touched on in the many sessions this week, there's a possibility for collaborative, international, collaborative research. And since one of the themes was certainly the developed versus developing countries, it seems to me this is where we can partner together and say, can we get some comparative research? Can we get some funding from international organizations? And in this way, the more wealthy nations or those with more infrastructure can help those who are trying to get it together by saying, look, let's have a project which we replicate in 4 countries and see if we can get that funded and that up. Now, I think those of you who have talked to colleagues from other countries and realize you have the same questions and same interests, why don't you get together on the internet and by email and say, can we develop a project? Can we talk to the Research Commission and World Leisure and get something up so that maybe when the next conference is up or the one after, we can come back with some results and say, yes, this is a trend across the world, or this is very different, or whatever. So I think the theme of comparative research is something which I think World Leisure should take up, and maybe more systematically in future congresses we might look for actual outcomes at congresses like this, you know, research proposals and collaborative projects which might take off from the Congress. So those are my 4 points of comment. There's lots of things we could say about the way the Congress is put together and for the future. I'll be putting a report together for the World Leisure Board, particularly because this was a slightly new departure where we had a program committee that was separate from the local organizing committee. So it's a new departure and we need to evaluate it. And so I'm certainly open for comments and other members of the program committee of what you think, what experiences from this Congress should be fed into the next one, and so we learn. And I'll go further than that. I've got all your emails, and you'll hear from me. And it's very easy. You know, you hit reply and you have say your piece. So I expect you to, every one of you, to at least one comment on what was good, what was bad, what we need to make sure we do again, what we need to fix, or whatever. So when you hear from me in the next week or so, please take the trouble to send me a line and a half or more. Some of you will send me 3 pages. That's okay. And it'll all be fed in the report back to the board and be fed into the future Congress planning. There's lots of thank yous going to be said in a moment, but I'd just like to thank the local organisers for their hospitality. I think an important ingredient in a Congress is nothing to do with the programme, the academic programme and the papers. It's to do with the layout, the fact that you can mingle together and talk, the fact that one has social events which keep us together, and friendly staff, helpful staff, and the whole atmosphere. And I've been very pleased myself with that buzz and that positive atmosphere and the milling around and the mixing and the social events, which are really half the battle, and the wonderful hospitality. So I'd particularly like to thank our Malaysian hosts for that, and thank all you for contributing to the programme.
Thank you very much, and let's give another big hand to the learned doctors up on the stage here, and ask them to take. I would like to call upon Professor Dr. Gerald Kenyon to join me on stage here. So proceed with the next item on the list. Thank you. Mafima, with the assistance of the government and all the other related bodies, it will be, it's our duty to recognize the presence and also recognize the help given by the volunteers. As Professor Smith mentioned, different categories of volunteers. And I would like to single out very fast each and every one of them. In this case, I'd like to ask the volunteers from the Asian Overland Services. That's Asrul, Christine, David, Kit Y. Please come to the front here. Kit Y, Laura, Celis, William, and Brian. I also like to recognize and invite the volunteers from the St. John's Association. Please come forward. From the Prime Minister's department, they have a department for conventions, and when international conventions are held in Malaysia, we from the non-governmental organizations, we can seek assistance from them. And 3 officers were here helping us throughout the day. Can I call upon Naima, Noraini, and Nurha Fiza? Could you please step up here? And if the ladies in black who all the time running around, all of you during tea time and going in and out of the offices, being the doorman, well, they're from the university. And I'd like to call them up. Amiruddin, Aranjit Kaur, come to the left here. Aranjit Kaur, Fatima, please come up. Kumariswari, Manveen Gill, Punita, Sughuna, Susie Phillips, and Said Najib. Well, this is all that we have that helped to run the conference, and let's give a big hand to them and say thank you. Thank you very much. The Mafima particularly would like to really record a thank you to them.
And then there's the chair of the program committee. When I called Tony Veal to ask whether he would agree to serve as the chair, I fully expected a refusal. Some of you are not aware that this is not the first Congress that Tony has organized. In fact, he was instrumental in making an enormous success of our second World Congress in Sydney in 1991. But fortunately, Tony's memory has failed, you see, totally. And he forgot about how it was to organize a program, and he agreed. And of course, I couldn't be more delighted with that response. And I think you can all agree that if there's one person that has worked day and night to pull this program together, if you haven't had at least 4 communications, maybe 6 and 8 communications from Tony, I would be very surprised. We've had a few ourselves. And his tireless work on a day-to-day basis, and particularly during the closing weeks of the planning, took an enormous amount of work, and we were faced with uncertainties, as many of you are aware, but he pulled it all together in what I think was a remarkable package. At the same time, he fought for a principle that he believes in when it comes to conferences and congresses, and that is, in fairness to the presenter, who's gone to considerable length to prepare a presentation, and in fairness to the audience, you really ought to preserve enough time for that presentation. And Tony fought for that, and whereas you may have experienced in other conferences where it's mechanical, it's very easy. You set up a program of 1 hour and 15 minutes, and then you list 8 presenters, and they each get 7 or 8 minutes, and it's just a frustrating experience all around. I hope that didn't happen here. I can't believe it did. There's never enough time, of course, to discuss. We know that. But Tony, again, fought for that principle, and I'm very pleased I think he was able to pull that off. So thank you, Tony. I appreciate that. I'd like to turn now to express appreciation to our hosts, Marfima. We've had strong support from the President, the Right Honourable Dato Seri Shahidin Qasim, the board of Marfima, and of course the Marfima staff, which you've already seen recognized. We add our deep appreciation to each of those members, and I'd like at this point to call upon the members of the Marfima board to come forward and be recognized. So if most of you, I believe, are here, so would you please come forward, beginning with the Vice President of Marfima, Haj Isa Mohammed Ibrahim Shah. Come forward. Abdullah Qasim. N. Mohanadas. And Sergeant Singe is the executive officer. Nordine Hussain. Abdu Malik. Rohan Ghanessan. Lee Kwon Meng. And V.S. Manion. Ramakrishnan. And Mohammed Kamarudin. Ladies and gentlemen, the Marfima board, thank you for your support. And then, on the ground, there's always a Congress director. Sergeant Singe has served in that capacity, and I can't imagine, at least to my knowledge, and I've had a number of people monitoring him, that he's had any sleep this week at all. He seems to be available in all hours of the day and night, and some of you may have found that out in one way or another. It's only an indication of the attention to detail that Sergeant has brought to this conference, particularly in its closing days when the details are necessary to be attended to. No longer can you imagine, well, in generalities, the work has to get done. And Sergeant, we are very grateful for the work that you've done. And I wonder if you might just come forward. I'd like to present you a little token of that appreciation. there's one feature that stands out in my mind that has been generated by our hosts, and that is the warmth and depth of their hospitality. It's absolutely been splendid, in my judgment, and I don't know if anybody else experienced it or not, but no matter where you turn, there was always someone there to help, always someone there with a smile, always someone there for whatever need we may have had at this time during the conference. And I just think this was a major, major element of this conference and should not go unnoted. So I want to thank... And so I'm going to ask Mohammed Isa Ibrahim Shah, the Vice President of NARFEMA, to come forward and receive just a token of our appreciation for that wonderful hospitality. We at the Secretariat, again, communicate regularly with the organizing committee in Kuala Lumpur. In fact, I think you might say this has been an electronic Congress. We've arranged so many things electronically, and certainly delegates have been involved in that process as well. We have had to, of course, relate very, very closely with the staff of the Asian Overland Services. I just want to, again, add my appreciation, because it's been difficult sometimes under changing circumstances and uncertainties, but on behalf of the World Leisure Organization and Secretariat, I just want you all to know that we are very appreciative to the Director of AOS, Mr. Anthony Wong, and also the other members of the staff that have been working so hard and have already been recognized, so I won't recognize them by name, though I am tempted to mention Christine Key and Laura Wong. They have been exceptionally helpful, and I know they have a lot of support staff behind them, but again, they've been on the emails several times a day, I know, and again, you've been involved in their help as well. So I'd like to ask Christine and Laura just to stand again and just express our appreciation. Thank you. No Congress goes forward without support from a variety of sources, and probably the most important one here, of course, has been support by the government of Malaysia. And I just want to make certain that you appreciate the support that we've had from the Minister of Culture, Arts and Tourism, and particularly Tourism Malaysia. And last night, of course, was the best illustration of that. However, supporting us throughout the planning and throughout the Congress, of course, has been the Ministry of Youth and Sports. And we have today, of course, we've had support from the Minister himself, who gave a presentation, as you recall, on our opening evening. And we've had many officers of the ministry involved in the planning and directly supporting our Congress efforts. We have with us today the Dato Raja Raslan, who is the Director General of the Ministry of Youth and Sport, and I would like to recognize Dato Raslan. Thank you. And also with Dato Raslan is Mr. Soraya Salamat, Assistant Deputy Director General of the Ministry of Youth and Sport, and I would like to recognize Soraya Salamat. Well, you've heard already that World Leisure is closing its 50th year, if you like, and I think it's closing its 50th year on an optimistic note. You've heard that plans are already in place for the next 3 Congresses. And I can assure you that, or inform you, that we've already had inquiries about Congresses in 2010 and 2012, and it's about time I think we might put a stop for the inquiries, anything beyond that at this stage. But what that tells us is that there's a tremendous interest out there, and for that reason we're most grateful for those that, and I think it's a commitment to the association, and therefore we're very, very pleased to find that that interest is there. But Congresses are only part of what we do, and I want to remind you of that. We're engaged in publications. We are engaged in educational programs, most notably our World Leisure Center of Excellence, the postgraduate program in the Netherlands, which has reached a level of maturity now, serving students primarily from the developing world, bringing together those students with international faculty members for a learning experience which is unique in the world, and we're very, very proud of that program. We have, at the same time, from time to time, we do regional conferences and to focus our interests geographically and making it more practical for people to attend. And there's a variety of other ways that we think that the organization may well be expanding in the future. So I just want to invite you to continue your interest, strengthen your ties with the association, and make this a good beginning for the next 50 years. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate the opportunity to express our appreciation and wish everyone a safe journey.
Thank you, Professor Gerald Kenyon. We have already set our minds to visit Quebec, Hangzhou, and also Brisbane. As the convention director, if you see those banners that are lined there, I would like to now present these banners to the convention directors of these 3 cities so that they can take back to their secretariats and put them up. And hopefully with that theme and then themes after that, and with the professional advice from WL on the programs, we would definitely be able to address all the little queries that have come up in this conference and all the suggestions by the learned doctors in the first part of this morning's program. I'd like to call upon, well, let's go the furthest away, Quebec. Can I call Quebec to come and receive anyone from Quebec here? Please. The Chief of the Secretariat for Hangzhou, Dr. Dickon Yong. Mr. Henschel from Brisbane. My president and my deputy president that we would like to show an appreciation to the members of the World Leisure Board. And yesterday I got a call from His Royal Highness Raja Dato Roslan saying that he wants to present a gift to the board. So he organized the gifts very fast, immediately. I'd like to call upon the members of the World Leisure to please step up and let's give them an ovation. And also I call upon the Director General of Youth and Sports Department, Raja Roslan, to present them with a gift. Can I call upon, not in order, have I left out anyone? Please? No. Those who have left us, we will send the souvenirs to them. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a hand. These are the world leaders. I'd like to call upon the Director General of Youth and Sports Malaysia, Yang Mulia Raja Roslan, to kindly present your gift to them. just purchased. We are not going to ask them to open those presents, but let me tell you, they are Slangoputer miniature of the world Twin Towers, the Twin Towers in Kuala Lumpur. Head of the Secretariat, personally the Secretary General of MAFIMA, I'm going to take this opportunity to, on behalf of all of you, on behalf of the Secretariat, on behalf of MAFIMA, to say thank you to someone who really worked with us for the last 3 weeks to put everything in place, and without which we would not have succeeded, frankly. I'll be very frank with you. It's like the last runner in the 4 times 100 meters, you know, the man who makes the dash and hit. I know his boss is with him, but I have no choice. I'd like to introduce and recognize the presence of the Director of Fitness in the Ministry of Youth and Sports, Mr. Suraya Slaman. Thank you, Suraya. Thank you very much. Thank you. I know you're seated beside your boss, but don't blush, please. Well, it takes also all people to help. I would like to call upon Yang Mulia Raja Roslan and Tuan Haji Isa to please come up and join me on the table. And invite our Deputy President, Mr. Ibrahim Shah, Mr. Isa Ibrahim Shah, to kindly deliver your speech. You could use the rostrum. Thank you.
Datuk Raja Roslan, Director General of the Ministry of Sports, Ministry of Youth and Sports, Professor Dr. Gerard Kanyan, Sarjit Singh, ladies and gentlemen. Now we are also coming up to almost the end of our 7th Leisure Congress. It makes me very sentimental, because we have been working together in very friendly atmosphere. We've been working together very closely. And then somehow, I do not know whether it was a coincidence or whether it was engineered by Sarjit. The temperature went down. When the temperature went down, we were asked to get closer together. And we work very much closer together, and we understand each other more. Even Paula, who hails down from Finland, said to me, it's cold, I was thinking it's her natural habitat. But anyway, I think you can't trust Sajid, Maybe he really pushed the temperature down so that we can get to work closer to each other. Now very soon, I think I got to change a little bit of the sayings. Going apart, when I was young, I used to write in the autograph, out of sight, out of mind. But I think we do a little bit of, in science we call it inversely proportional. We say, this time don't say out of sight, out of mind. But we say, out of sight will bring closer memories to the mind. So we have been close together. I hope we always remember our time together. It is nice to have a lot of friends. So we can only say that somewhere in the distant shores, we have friends waiting for you. And then Most of us here, most of the people who work are actually volunteers. And we work as a volunteer. And then sometimes we may have made some mistakes, or we may have been a little bit rough to you in our effort to do some work. If we have done so, please excuse us. And I ask for forgiveness from every one of you if we have done something wrong or we have been a little bit rough to you. It is always in our culture to serve our guests and friends as much as we can. This is the Malaysian culture. But sometimes we may make mistakes, but we try our best to serve you. So for this, I just want to say something. If we have not served you well, please tell us. If we have done so, if we have served you well, please tell others. If you do meet again, we shall smile. Thank you very much.
Dato Raja Roslan, and he has kindly consented to say a few words to you and also declare the conference close. Invite you, Yang Mulia Raja.
A very good morning and selamat pagi, Mr. Sajid, the chairperson, Dr. George Kilsen, chairman of the World Leisure, Professor Dr. Gerald Kayan, the Secretary General of World Leisure, Yang berbahagia Tuan Haji Isa Ibrahim Shah, the Deputy President of MAFIMA, board members of the World Leisure, board members of MAFIMA, fellow delegates, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, on behalf of the government of Malaysia, particularly the Ministry of Youth and Sports Malaysia, I would like to express again our appreciation to the World Leisure Board Committees for selecting Malaysia to play host to this prestigious Congress, which is being held for the first time in Malaysia and Southeast Asia. I would like to congratulate the Malaysian Leisure and Recreation Council, or in short, MARFIMA, for hosting the 7th World Leisure Congress for 2002 in Kuala Lumpur successfully. I believe and hope you all take advantage of the many opportunities, especially during the papers presentation by the speakers throughout the session. And I hope all of you has benefits from the ideas and views. And I believe, especially the Malaysian, our NGOs, my officers from the Ministry of Youth and Sport, the government officers from other department and ministry, and the private sectors who are attending this Congress, has gained tremendous knowledge, especially from the papers that have been presented during this Congress. The Ministry of Youth and Sports, Malaysia, will pick up and make follow-up to the various excellent ideas and views that was shared during this session. And I believe it will be a great help and a great reference to strengthen our Sport for All program in Malaysia. I hope you have enjoyed your stay in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, although it's a short time, it's a busy time with all the papers and the session. And please bring this good memory home and do come again to Malaysia with your family and your friends. To the MAFIMA, I hope they will continuously function strongly as the coordinator and umbrella body for the leisure and the recreation organization in Malaysia, and become active partners with the government's agencies, especially with the Ministry of Youth and Sport Malaysia, in realizing the Sport for All program through Fitness Malaysia or Malaysia Shergas. I'd like to ensure the Deputy President and all the members from MAFIMA that the Ministry of Youth and Sport will fully support your program for the future. I would like to take the opportunity to thank especially Mr. Garel Kenyon, the Secretary General of the World Leisure, and of course Dr. George, the Chairman of the World Leisure, for the excellent job done and give us the opportunity to host this World Congress. Last and not least, I hope the warm friendship will continue, and I hope you enjoy your stay and have a pleasant journey home. With those words and hope, I officially declare close the 7th World Leisure Congress 2002 in Kuala Lumpur, and hope to see you all in Brisbane, Australia from 12 to 17 September 2004. Thank you very much.
Yang Mulia Raja Roslan, that ends the session. And a little bit of housekeeping and also a few words. Just for statistics to know, there were 23 countries that participated, and total official delegations were 292. Total, 290. If we were to include all the volunteers and those personnel who were helping us and officials from the private and public sectors, the total people involved in this conference were about almost 320. The certificates of attendance, very beautiful certificates of attendance, are ready. We apologize for the delay in the printing. There was a miscommunication with the press. However, they were done, and Dr. Gerald was sitting the whole night signing them. I did them this morning. Please collect your certificates. You can also take for your friends or whoever has left if they are staying close to you. But for those who do not get certificates, we will post it to them. You can collect them from the registration center of the Asian Overlands. So with that, I would like to end by echoing what